judges have now entered into the room. My name is Ellen Zwarnstein. I'm the executive director at the Michigan Center for Civic Education, and a long time ago sat right where you were. So I encourage you to be present, have fun, and just really, the last hearing of the day, ramp it up, right? So that we can leave a memorable mark on the day. So in a moment, the judges will introduce themselves. They will ask you to introduce yourselves. They'll read the question and then the hearing will begin, and hopefully there'll be some time cards at the appropriate times in this particular window. Wish you the very best. Have a wonderful hearing.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the last round. And maybe we should just pause for a second and allow you to invite a few more people to watch your performance thing. This is awesome. I love all the folks. Congratulations for having so many supporters. I love this. Maybe down the road we can do this in a live and in a gymnasium or something, and really get it going. My name's Tom Vance. I'm a professor of education at Kansas State University, and we're going to go out on a bang, right? Let's do this.
I'm Rita McCannon. I'm a lawyer in Huntsville, Alabama, about as far away on the other side of the country as you can get, but I think you'll be able to understand my accent.
Oh my gosh. My name is Darcy Kern. I'm a professor of history at Southern Connecticut State University. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
And would you all please introduce yourselves to us?
Good afternoon, judges. We are Reno High School's Unit 3. My name is Emma Peak, and I'll be attending the University of Nevada.
My name is Owen Watson, and I will also be attending the University of Nevada.
My name is Soha Rayhan, and I will be attending the University of Nevada.
And my name is Maitane Wooden, and I too will be attending the University of Nevada. Our unit coach is Dr. Matthew Oakes, and our teacher is Mr. Richard Clark.
Fantastic. Well, we've selected question number 1. Here are the questions that will frame our discussion this afternoon. I do not think the United States would come to an end if we lost our power to declare an act of Congress void. I do think the Union would be imperiled if we could not declare, if we could not make that declaration as to the laws of the several states. What impact has judicial review had on federalism? Is judicial review a counter-majoritarian practice? Please, whatever you do, for Pete's sakes, support your position. And what limits, if any, would you place on the practice of judicial review? We are ready whenever you are.
By denying any one government complete jurisdiction over all the concerns of public life, federalism protects the liberty of the individual from arbitrary power. When government acts in excess of its lawful powers, that liberty is at stake. Justice Kennedy outlines the essence of federalism in his cert petition opinion in the 2011 case, Bond versus United States.
By removing partisanship and allowing the court to be the ultimate judges of federalism, the practice of judicial review is counter-majoritarian, which is a system in which popular opinion can either be supported or ignored through governmental action. Because of this, public opinion should not be used to place restraints on judicial review, and any restrictions should be institutional.
Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes asserts that the Supreme Court must be able to declare an act of state void, but not necessarily an act of Congress. However, as Justice Marshall stated in the majority opinion in the 1803 case Marbury versus Madison, removing judicial review would be giving to the legislature a practical and real omnipotence with the same breath which professes to restrict their powers within narrow limits. The Supreme Court must retain its independence and authority over both the states and the federal government in order to preserve the delicate balance of federalism enshrined in the Constitution.
The 10th Amendment reserves rights for the states, allowing for retention of state sovereignty, as seen in 1992 through New York versus United States, which that coercing states into assuming liability for waste was unconstitutional.
However, judicial review has also allowed the judicial branch to expand federal powers to limit states' authority. Through the doctrine of incorporation, states have been prohibited from violating the excessive fees and fines clause of the 8th Amendment through Timms versus Indiana in 2018.
The writtenness of the Constitution protects counter-majoritarianism and federalism through several clauses. The authority of the court is upheld by Article 3 through the Law and Equity Clause, which implies the practice of judicial review. Additionally, Article 1 allows the states to determine the times, places, and manners of their elections, but also includes that Congress has the power to alter these regulations.
Counter-majoritarian practices have been instituted into the court in an effort to protect the liberties of the individual, not to favor the states nor the federal government, making the Supreme Court the ultimate arbiter of federalism. In 2013, the court ruled in United States versus Windsor that Section 3 of the Defense Marriages Act, which denied federal recognition of same-sex marriages, was unconstitutional. Similarly, the 2015 ruling in Obergefell versus Hodges determined that the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment protected individuals from state laws prohibiting same-sex marriage.
Because judicial review is a counter-majoritarian practice, we believe it must not be subverted by the other two branches of government. Restrictions on the judicial branch ought to exist, but must be determined from inside the court to prevent either the states or the federal government from obtaining an advantage.
Article 3 outlines that the court must be an appellate court, except for its narrow original jurisdiction. Further, the Purcell principle, established by the court in 2006 through Purcell versus Gonzalez, determined that the Supreme Court will not grant cert during the period just before an election. Additionally, in 2019, Rucho versus Common Cause set the precedent that the Supreme Court will not hear cases of partisan gerrymandering, allowing the states more authority over their redistricting practices.
As Alexander Hamilton stated in Federalist 78, the courts of justice are to be considered as the bulwarks of a limited constitution against legislative encroachments. Whether the court is judging a legislative encroachment of a state or the federal government, the practices of counter-majoritarianism and internal checks must ultimately uphold the stability of federalism. Thank you.
Perfect timing. So in our history, in the court's history of judicial interpretation, has the court tipped the division of power in favor of the federal government, the national government, vis-a-vis the states, or do you think it's tipped the balance of power to the states vis-a-vis the national government in the course of our history?
Before the Civil War, the Supreme Court mainly sided towards the states, and a case that really encapsulates this is Barron versus Baltimore in 1833, in which the Supreme Court ruled that the Bill of Rights did not apply to the states, which was ultimately overturned by the 14th Amendment, which started a progression that led the Supreme Court to favor the national government.
What other constitutional vehicles other than the 14th Amendment has the court used to expand the power of the national government?
In institute.
What said another way would be what clauses in the Constitution has the court used historically to limit the power of state governments?
We can see, based on constitutional, the supremacy clause of the Constitution, where it talks about how the federal government is to uphold this higher law, and that the states are supposed to share this concurrent sovereignty of the federal government. This was also seen through the case Taftland versus Leavitt in 1990, where Justice O'Connor's opinion stated that these powers are supposed to be under the higher law of the Constitution, that the Constitution is their blueprint in order to act justicably.
Another clause of the Constitution is the Commerce Clause in Article 1, which Congress and the federal government has used to expand their authority over state governments and over the individuals, such as in the case US versus Lopez, which uphold the gun-free schools.
Got it. So those are all vehicles by which the courts used clauses of the Constitution to increase the power of the federal government. If you could give the court some advice, some principles about when they should, when faced with a difficult decision using the Commerce Clause of the 14th Amendment or the Necessary and Proper Clause or whatever, and it leaves a lot of room for interpretation. If you could tell the court, give the court some advice, provide them with some principles, what would you tell them about how they should decide those cases that come before them that require them to balance that division of power?
Well, it's very important to note that the court themselves have set forth rules that regulate themselves, such as the idea that they won't get into political matters. So something that a piece of advice I would give to them is to stay to the set of rules that they've set for themselves, to make sure that they are judging everything fairly and staying within their personal bounds of what they believe they should be ruling on.
Other ideas?
As we've seen after the passing of the 13th Amendment, the importance of the enforcement provision has allowed for a large expansion of federal power, which has been deemed necessary after the abolition of slavery. So I believe that these enforcement provisions are very necessary for the court to balance when considering state power versus federal power.
Thank you.
A piece of advice that I would give to the Supreme Court, I thought of today while looking through the case that came out 5 days ago in Jones versus Mississippi, in which Justice Clarence Thomas dissented. And in a footnote 2, he wrote that it is interesting how the Supreme Court sways its opinion from minors from case to case, but it is fundamentally crucial for the Supreme Court to take a wide view on children in the Supreme Court and not view them as the same as adults. And he failed to protect this in his ruling in this case, but he should take a wider lens on the Supreme Court and not just have his views on this particular case, such as abortion cases, as he's thinking of, and look at a wider lens.
My question actually follows from this pretty well. You argue that the Supreme Court must restrict itself. You've argued that several times, that public opinion should not affect it, only institutional mechanisms should affect it. So what happens then if the Supreme Court rules erroneously? What checks are there on the court?
The Supreme Court, once they make a ruling, they have the other branches can check that ruling. For example, in Shelby County versus Holder, in the opinion, they wrote that this could be Congress could rewrite the Voting Rights Act, and specifically Section 4B, to reinstate the pre-clearance laws and just update the law to make it constitutional.
Additionally, most recently, Joe Biden has signed an executive order on a presidential commission on the Supreme Court, which is planning to look into certain reforms on the Supreme Court, such as their time of justices on the court and how they are deciding certain cases. So I think that these powers that have some interference with the judicial branch is essential.
Additionally, another example would be creating an amendment to overturn court precedent. And this was shown after the Dred Scott decision, where radical Republicans eventually passed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to effectively reverse that decision. And it allowed the Constitution to more reflect what the radical Republicans wanted to see in the nation and not necessarily what the Supreme Court had ruled on in that case.
Hey, let me go back to something you said just a second ago. About President Biden. Do you think that the question of term limits versus lifetime appointment will come out from that commission?
Yes, I think that's something that's actually being debated about today. I personally would argue that a time of 18 years would better benefit the decisions that come out of the Supreme Court, because we would have more justices being involved and having a better, since we have a living constitution, it would better aid what we see today.
I disagree with my colleague Soha. With the current constitution, I do not believe that a term limit would be upheld as constitutional through the good behavior clause, because it's widely been interpreted as a lifetime appointment. If an amendment is made to limit the tenure of Supreme Court justices, I could see this as a viable option, because both Republicans and Democrats support term limits. And the Republicans first adopted term limits in their 1992 platform. So this is a change we should make in the United States.
Furthermore, multiple House resolutions have been put forth. In specific, there was one in 2020 that also tried to, or is looking to instate 18-year term limits. And these types of term limits are even supported by multiple judges. For example, Justice John Roberts stated that term limits are good because they allow the judges, because there's only so long you can stay in the ivory tower that judges are put into until you become disconnected with what's happening below you in your kingdom, as he says.
It seems clear to me in my understanding of constitutional history that the power of judicial review at the state level was clearly intended by the Constitution. And you mentioned the Supremacy Clause as one source of that. But what my question to you, was the power of judicial review at the national level to check a co-equal branch, Congress or the executive branch, was that intended by the founders?
Well, it had to be intended by the founders to uphold the writtenness of our Constitution. Article 1, Section 9 declares that no bill of attainder or ex post facto law will be imposed. But who will uphold this if there's not the institutionality of the Supreme Court to decide the constitutionality of these laws?
Additionally, according
In Federalist 78, Alexander Hamilton states that it is the duty of the Supreme Court to say what the law is. The founders directly intended for Article 3, the Law and Equity Clause, to allow the justices and to allow the court to determine what the law is and uphold the supremacy of the Constitution.
Additionally, in James Madison's Federalist 47 and 48, he talks about how this separation of powers is important. May I continue?
Yeah, go ahead, finish your idea.
And that the judicial branch is supposed to make everything neutral. It's supposed to make these branches equal in governance under the guise of our Constitution.
Thank you very much. Give yourselves a round of applause. That was an unbelievably effective presentation. And, you know, this is day 3 of the national finals, friends. And we pushed you, and we pushed all the groups today. And you rose to the challenge. It's, you know, there's a difference between just knowing a whole bunch, and everybody on day 3 knows a whole bunch, right? I mean, everybody on day 3 knows a whole bunch, but there's a difference between that and being able to synthesize the right bits of information and answer follow-up questions. I thought you did a reasonable job with that for all of our questions. For my particular, that first question, which is a little different than most of the questions we the people, trying to get you to generalize from all these specific details that you're learning to a higher principle, and also not just reporting what the Supreme Court says, but what you think as a citizen, right? Because we're all interpreters of the Constitution. So I thought you did a fantastic job. And it's a good thing that you did, because half of Nevada is in this Zoom hearing right now. And so good work, my friends.
I told you guys it was going to be postage stamp pictures. I meant it. And that's what happened. Oh, and I want to get you off to the side after this is all over and talk about the Jones case. I practice a lot of juvenile law, and it really gutted the Miller decision that comes out of Alabama. So I was fascinated that came out last week, and you already know about it. That speaks to my heart. If you didn't answer somebody else's question, you plucked my strings. So that was great. I appreciate so much all of y'all's preparation. You can always tell when a group is ready when you're stepping on each other to answer, because you all have a perspective and you don't all have exactly the same perspective, which I think is really nice. I started to say Precious and Darling, but Darcy would start laughing and then she wouldn't be able to evaluate you at the end. I really enjoyed it and I look forward to hearing from you another time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll laugh anyways. Why not? Look, this was excellent. You guys talked about both historical, philosophical points in the Federalist Papers. You gave constitutional details. You gave specific Supreme Court examples. You clearly are up on the latest with cases and political decisions. You answered my question very well. And I thought, Owen, your answer on the 18-year term limits, we've heard almost every group today mention that, but your answer that they're actually not constitutional because in the Constitution, justice is served through good behavior. I thought that was a really fascinating answer. And it's unique to what we've heard today. So, and like my colleague said, you guys work very well with each other. You clearly all know this. You're all jumping in, as fast as you can to say something. And yeah, this was a great way to end the day. Good job.
Thank
All right.
you.
An extra round of applause for an amazing performance and for providing the energy at the end of a very long 3 days. We're so excited for your futures, for your todays and for your futures, I should say. All right, at this time, judges, if you could click the breakout room, and
Judges,
I'll
thank
meet
you so
you
much for your
over there in
time.
just a couple minutes, and then we'll probably hear a brief celebration from Nevada.
Thank you guys again for your time.
I hope you feel awesome. That was a fantastic performance. All right, if you want